peace. Freedom from disturbance, tranquility, or a state or period in which there is no war or war has ended. I believe in peace. There are very few trash cans in London. When you walk around what has affectionately been called London's Square Mile, which is essentially a radius surrounding London's famous tourist attractions, Buckingham Palace, the Tower of London, and so on, you will observe that there are a limited number of public trash cans. When I was a teenager, I accepted this fact without question. You see, when I grew up in England, aside from having to deal with 1980s shoulder pads, leg warmers, and frightening bright-coloured clothes, it was also a period of unrest between England and Ireland, known as the Troubles, or Northern Ireland conflict, lasted from 1968 to 1998. During this time, London was frequently a target of this violence, and a group called the Provisional IRA, or Irish Republican Army, believed that Ireland should be an independent republic free from British rule. To draw attention to their cause, and ultimately force the British out of Ireland, they placed explosive devices in trash cans and detonated them. Along with my friends, we learned never to stand near a trash can, and if we saw one, we remained vigilant. And when we walked around Piccadilly Circus, Leicester Square, or other notable areas, we had our eyes open. You see, I knew what a terrorist was even before I went to high school. And while I don't think I understood what the fighting was all about, I knew without a doubt that I wanted people to live peacefully. In the year 2000, I was offered an incredible job with Reuters, the international news agency, now owned by the Thomson Reuters Corporation. At the time, I worked in human resources, aka the director of adult experience, and my office overlooked 3 Times Square, New York City. In fact, I could look out of my window and see the famous ball perched on 1 Times Square that drops down a flagpole each New Year's Eve. New York City reminded me of London on steroids, yet it was fundamentally different. Though it was faster, bigger, louder, angrier, dirtier, and busier, it had a similar vibe that I loved. And in the year 2000, New York City felt safe to me. When I left the building for lunch, I would literally walk in whatever direction the crowd was travelling, because I always felt like a fish swimming against a human tide of people if I went in the opposite direction. I learned to ignore the traffic and yell back when people yelled at me. I expect many people in this room have been to New York City. Maybe you have family or relatives there. Maybe you like to watch a theatre show or eat somewhere fancy. Downtown, uptown, or midtown. As the singer Frank Sinatra said, New York never sleeps. It is truly 24/7 and some. However, one extraordinary Tuesday morning in September, things changed beyond recognition. That day, I arrived early, met a colleague for breakfast, and casually returned to my office to take a call. I remember talking about a project we were working on when the person suddenly interrupted me. They said that someone had accidentally flown a plane into one of the Twin Towers. And at the same time, I could see a few people walking towards a corner office on our floor, where if you looked out of the window, you could just about see the Twin Towers. I finished the call quickly and rushed to join a gathering crowd. I could just about see something sticking out of a tower, very high up, and there was smoke. What happened next I recall as a series of slow-motion events. Being a trusted source of news around the world, Reuters had television screens all over the office building. Within minutes, there was coverage of the Twin Towers. Newscasters were lost for words, and telephones began ringing incessantly. The most senior human resources person for the Reuters America division was visiting a sister company in Palo Alto, and that left me. I remember taking the elevator to the chief executive's office. I knocked quietly on the door and walked in. Senior company managers were talking with colleagues in England, and I offered my support. Over the next few hours, as we all realised the enormity of this tragedy and watched it unfold before our eyes, we created standard operating procedures in real time. Our first task was to account for all the Reuters employees at work that day in New York City. We discovered that there was a conference at the windows on the World Restaurant in the North Tower, where at least 6 employees were participating. We set up an internal call centre within the Human Resources Department so that we could respond to the myriad of calls coming in, and so it went on. Now, I don't want to use this opportunity to recount this tremendous sadness and devastation that is well known and well documented. Rather, I want to share what made me hopeful. To this day, I remain struck by the compassion and support that we all gave to each other at work. In the days and months that followed, Reuters provided incredible help to staff directly impacted by September the 11th. Foundations were created to honour employees. Counsellors were brought in to talk with people for as long as they needed help. And this goodwill extended beyond organisations. Someone seemed to have turned down the volume on New York City. New York remained subdued for what seemed like months. People were kinder towards each other, cars stopped honking their horns at pedestrians, and overnight we became united in our resolve to help one another. While governments around the world took action, many of us, myself included, embraced a belief and commitment to peace. Now, people say timing is everything. And almost 25 years later, in April 1998, the Good Friday Peace Agreement was signed. Now, this deal brought an end to all of the conflict in Northern Ireland, the Troubles. So in conclusion, I would like to paraphrase a famous singer and musician. You might say that I'm a dreamer, and I hope I'm not the only one. Perhaps someday you'll join me and imagine the world will be as one. This, I believe.